Hi, everyone. This is Dee. Welcome to another episode of Eternal Evolution of Self. I have another amazing guest with me today. This is Melissa. Thank you for coming to be with us on this podcast today. I appreciate you so much. And tell us
Of
about
course.
what you do in this life.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. I'm a wife, I'm a mom. We were just talking a little bit before we recorded. I've got two teenagers, and I'm a holistic health and life coach, and I help teen girls and women find freedom from the struggle with food.
And that seems to be a very prevalent issue in our society today. So tell us about your approach and what you do to help people resolve the issues around food.
Yeah, so it's just so interesting because I think the tricky thing with food, D, is that it's like something we need. We need
Yeah.
to nourish our bodies, right? And so we don't really think about our relationship with food or why we go to food or what time we're eating food because there seems like there's so many societal norms around that. Like we eat lunch at noon, we eat breakfast, we eat three meal, like so many just things that we have acclimated to or grown up with, and that's kind of what we know. And I don't think we really stop and kind of ask, hey, am I hungry right now? Like, yeah, I know it's noon, but am I even hungry, and does my body need fuel? So it's really kind of helping people peel back the layers and look at their relationship with food, learn how to listen to their bodies, learn how to figure out what works best for them because we're all different, but we live in a world of one size fits all. And so it's really helping people tap into their uniqueness, the way that they're made, their relationship with food, their bodies, their lives, and what they need. So super exciting.
What do you find is a common thread throughout the people that you have been working with?
Yeah, I think there are two. And I think the first one is there has been some sort of trauma that's happened in their life. That was very much my journey. Like my trauma caused me to go to food to make myself feel better. It became a coping mechanism. So trauma is usually a piece of the puzzle, but then also the diet culture and all of the messaging that diet culture tells us, you need to shrink. This food is bad. This food is good. You need to do this plan. You need to exercise like this. I mean, there's so many messages around what we should and shouldn't do that a lot of people, including myself, have a hard time letting go of what we've been taught and really kind of going within.
Hmm. I do think that's true. And we do have a lot of societal dictates. And then we have and I'm so happy to see that finally I was going to mention the model culture, and the magazines. Well, there's not so many magazines anymore, but social media influencers and whatnot. And they're using filters and there's still this kind of culture around you need to look a specific way and be a specific size, but we have drifted away from that a little bit. And I noticed on some of the fashion shows that they are trending towards more models that are built a little differently. They may be a little bit um, larger sizes, or they're taller, or they're shorter, and their bodies are built differently than this kind of stick figure, kind of twiggy persona that used to be so prevalent. So I'm glad to see that. But how do you approach that particular topic with the people that you work with?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I don't think a lot of people are even aware that that's influenced them as much as it has.
Yeah.
And so, really, through working together, it's a great opportunity to ask questions and help them. That's what I love about coaching is it's really helping people asking questions and helping them figure out what's going on inside. And so they will realize on their own, like, oh, I didn't know that I had that thought or that belief was influencing me, or that magazine I saw was in high school kind of set the stage for how I needed to look as a woman. And so it's really kind of helping them peel back those layers as to why they think and believe the way they do and getting to the root of that because our beliefs affects our thoughts, which affects our actions, and it's how we show up.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talked about the diet culture a little bit, and I've never personally had an issue around food. So I feel very blessed for that because I know that that is a
Mhm.
very big struggle for a lot of people. But I've also never been one that has been a big proponent of dieting because to me, they fail, most of them across the board, because they're not sustainable in the way. I mean, like, no one's going to keep eating in that way. Well, I shouldn't say no one. Very few people are going to continue to eat in that way because they don't get to have the foods that they like, or there's a lot of work behind it, counting calories, or portion, but whatever. I'm more like a portion control person. I feel like that has been what has worked for me in my life, so how do you approach the diet culture piece of
Yeah, again, it's interesting because a lot of women will come to me and we'll start working together and they'll be like, okay, so you're going to tell me what to eat and you're going to tell me when to eat. And I'm like, no, I'm going to help you tap into your body and what it needs and really helping guide them to listen to their body and trust the way that they're made. And so it's so interesting because I just finished working with a client and she was like, I didn't realize all of the messaging that had crept in from diet culture and how it just programs everything, oh,
that?
this food is bad, this food is good, I shouldn't eat after 2 o'clock. And it becomes this set of rules and just rigidness that is just bondage. It's not freedom at all. And so it's
Right.
it's really exciting to help them discover that, oh my gosh, everything I knew and everything I've been told doesn't apply to me and my body. And so that's, I think, what's super exciting and how we get to that.
Yeah, yeah, that is really exciting, and I'm sure that's very freeing for your clients to come to that realization. So, how do you approach the rigidness? Because you use that term about, like we need to eat at this time of day and these meals and that kind of stuff. So, how do you approach that?
Yeah, I think it's really replacing judgment with curiosity. And so, really teaching people like, instead of viewing my relationship with food as this rigid thing where I have to eat this time, this amount, this food, whatever the rules may be. So, really kind of peeling that away and saying, why do you feel that way? When are you hungry? And really kind of asking some questions around that behavior so that they can figure out where that's coming from and really get to that epiphany on their own. Because it's just, again, it's more rules and regulations and do this, don't do that, and that's not at all what it is. That's just not freedom.
Right. It's not freedom. And it's important for us to feel like we can have, I mean, because eating is something that we have to do. We have to do it. It
Yes.
fuels our bodies. We have to have that for the health and well-being of our physical bodies. So we're not going to get away from that, right? It's something that is imperative for our survival as a human. So I think being able to experience that freedom, um, and having that concept hit home for these people and to have them be able to embrace it must just be really powerful for them.
Yeah, it is because they start to see themselves differently. They start to get more confidence because they know how to listen to themselves. And then that shows up in other areas. And I think, too, to your point with food, it's tricky because we do need it to survive. And it's not something that if we're addicted to it, we're not going to be judged for it because we need food to survive. If I showed up at the car line to pick up my kids and I was drunk, I would probably be judged.
Right.
Now, if I had just had like 3 blizzards on the way there, I don't think the judgment would be quite the same. So that societal pressure with food and again the addiction piece is really, I think, a tricky caveat too, because we need food to survive. It's not something we can do without. Like it's a
Right.
necessity for our survival.
It is for sure. And I mean, there's so many questions that come up for me around this kind of topic because it's very curious for me because like I said, I've never had an issue around food. So and I know that a lot of us are brought up with it being like we hear the term comfort food a lot. So, and those are more your richer kind of stick to your ribs or sweet kind of foods
Mhm.
and things like that. So, do you find that descriptive terms like that um, play any kind of piece in the food journey?
That's a good question. I haven't considered that. I think so. And I think, again, it goes back to our relationship with food. I have what's coming to mind is I had a woman I worked with who was craving cheese and crackers, and she did not even like cheese and crackers. So found it curious. I'm like, okay, so what's going on here? You're craving something that you don't like. What's behind that? Did a little digging and come to find out when she was a kid and let me backtrack. She craved the cheese and crackers when she was feeling stressed. So that was her comfort food in times of stress was cheese and crackers, which she doesn't like. In her childhood, when her family would get together and they would have a lot of happy, rich, memorable times together, they would eat cheese and crackers. So she associated in her brain cheese and crackers as being happy and rich and not stressful. So when she was feeling stressed, that's what she was craving. And so I think part of that goes back to our memories with food and what hold emotionally that it has on us. And that might sound strange, but if you think about it too, like I remember being in middle school and I ate those Bugle crackers and I ended up getting sick at a friend's house. I haven't had a Bugle to this day because I don't have a good memory. I don't have a good like
Right.
recollection of it. So I think a lot of that is connected to emotionally.
Mhm. It's really interesting because I've heard that, of emotional eating before, but I've never, oh, your illustration with the cheese and crackers really brings it home because she didn't even realize she was having that. Sorry, my lights are flashing. Do you see that? I don't know why that is.
Oh
Sorry.
no.
Tech Technology is interesting, but um yeah, so I mean that really is a really potent illustration of exactly what emotional eating is, because when you got into it, she was craving that happiness in her time of stress, and that was her association with food, was cheese and crackers, even though she didn't like it. So that's probably the most vivid illustration of emotional eating that I've ever heard in my life. I mean, that's
Yeah.
really, really interesting. And I really hope that that illustration helps someone else that is listening to this today recognize that in their own patterns, because that's, I mean, like, wow, because cheese and crackers isn't what you would really typically think of as comfort food, right? So that I think that's why to me it made such an impact, because that's kind of really a benign snack, really. I mean, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. And some people think, oh, this is healthy. It's a fat, it's a carb. Like they might even, kind of categorize it by the nutrient values that it gives. And I think too, like a lot of times people associate the comfort eating or the emotional eating with sugar.
Yes.
And that is a piece that was very much my journey. It was always the sweet stuff. And when you look at it from like a scientific perspective, it makes sense because when you have sugar, it releases dopamine in the brain. And when you have dopamine release, you need to have more and more of the dopamine release to feel that same experience. So you're going to eat more and more sugar to have that same experience of feeling good in the brain from the dopamine.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So do you encourage journaling in the beginning? Like, do you have your clients do like a food journal? And how does that work as far as helping them recognize places that they could change?
Yeah, so I will offer an extensive food and lifestyle review because I think a lot of people come in and they're not eating enough. And so that's a really kind of big red flag of the diet culture is you're totally restricting and not realizing it. And so it's starting off and realizing, okay, this is what you're getting as a starting point. This is where I think you could add in more, and that would help with your cravings, that would help your energy, that would help your mood. And so it's doing that. But then I also do an energy experiment where we try different types of protein, we try different types of carbs to really help them see what works best for their body, what gives them energy, what takes away energy. And then I think, too, for the emotional piece, if someone just feels like they are eating emotionally, journaling and getting those feelings out can be really helpful. And some people don't want to journal, so I will encourage them to make a video, just get it out, like just have a safe space to get all of the feelings out so you're not eating and stuffing them and feeling like you need to push them back down.
Right. Yeah, that's a great idea. I wouldn't have thought about like doing a video or something like that, but just getting the thoughts out of your body, it's so impactful. And I think, sometimes we're told we talk too much, but I think there's areas in our lives where we need to talk more. And I think it's maybe about the content and having that sacred space where it's protected. So I think that's a great idea. So, how do you approach maybe like peer pressure as far as eating goes? Like, learning to do things that are good for you despite what it looks like for your friend that you're sitting next to at the table. So, could you delve into that a little bit?
That's such a great question. And it's very real. I mean, that's what's really crazy is we have this whole session on sabotage. And that's one of the forms of sabotage is desiring acceptance. And so I think what's really helpful is to kind of role play through that scenario and do like a visualization of, okay, so you're going to go to the birthday party. When you go to the birthday party, what are you thinking? What are you feeling? What are some things you can do to set yourself up for success beforehand so that you don't give into that peer pressure? And where's that coming from? Usually we want to be accepted, we want to fit in, or
Right.
we're scared we're going to hurt somebody's feelings. Like, oh, I'm
Yes.
sorry, I can't have that. Right. And so I think just kind of talking through that and setting the stage, giving people some word choices, because a lot of times people don't know what to say. And
Right.
so just kind of equipping and figuring out like these are some things you can do instead that can be really helpful.
That's awesome. And what types of word choices would you tell someone that's having a hard time around something like that? I mean, just, and I
Yeah,
don't
I
want
mean,
you to expose your whole program, but just a couple ideas.
yeah, I mean, I think no thank you is perfectly acceptable. I think, I'm trying a different way of eating. I'm learning what works for my body. I need to pass for now. I think that looks wonderful. I'm not hungry for that. I mean, I think we make it so much about ourselves, but really it's not. I mean, and maybe this is just different points on the journey, but if I've had plenty of times where I've made something and people haven't eaten in my house, my feelings weren't hurt. I didn't get upset. I just respected that that was their choice and I was okay with it. It doesn't have anything to do with me.
Right. Right. And sometimes people just don't like a certain thing, and it's perfectly fine. I don't know why we put so, I mean, it is about acceptance and it is about not wanting to hurt someone's feelings. So I get that, but we put so much pressure on ourselves about it. I mean, it's unbelievable that something we need for survival becomes like this tool, and unknowingly, I think a lot of times we just don't realize it's even happening, and it becomes this tool and sometimes even a weapon, which is, really not cool.
No, and I think too with families, that can be a real thing. If you've got like a grandma who has this recipe that she always makes, I mean, that guilt can be really real. Like your grandma can kind of guilt trip you into things, not intentionally or not knowingly, but like I think it comes from a place of love from her and she wants to make you feel good and she wants you to eat her really good food. And so I think it's just there's a lot of relational dynamics going on. There's a lot of emotions, and it's not really something we think about because it's complex.
Yeah, it's not. It's just something I think we grow up with a lot of that, and it's so ingrained in us. We don't really know what to do about it. And it's not always the healthiest thing for us. I don't I'm not quite sure what happened with me where I never had that issue, because most everyone in my family is heavier. I mean, there's a few people who aren't, but most everyone is. And I watched that um, struggle with some of my family members, and I thought, I'm just going to be mindful. I don't know that I used that word, but I think I said to myself, I'll probably just pay attention. But because before I started this journey into spirituality, I didn't even use words like mindful. So, but just being mindful, I think, and just like you said, listening to your body, and that's so important. So, how do you
And
teach
I
people
think,
to listen to their bodies?
yeah, I want to just piggyback off of what you said. I think that mindful piece is so important, Dee, because like it requires us to be mindful of ourselves and what we need, but also the other person. Because with that
Yes,
grandma example, you could easily go back and say, Grandma, I love that you made these for me. I know that it comes from a place of love and compassion, and I thank you for that. However, right now, I'm just not in a place to eat that, and I hope you can understand that. Like, it's not just being mindful of ourselves, but other people and how it's going to affect them and their perspective on it. So I think
right.
that piece is so huge and it can create such a ripple effect.
Yeah, it really can, And one of the things I say too is I eat pretty much whatever I want. And I'll say, eat a piece. Don't eat the whole thing. Like if you want to, like I was even talking to a friend of mine about it, and she's like, I said, do you realize we have a dessert almost every night? Because she's,
Mhm.
I'm quite a bit, thinner than she is. And I said that, like I eat food too. Like if I want it, I eat it, I said, but so if you want to have a piece of pie, and you usually have a piece of pie, still have a piece of pie, but like maybe a smaller piece of pie, like maybe make it half the size that you normally get. Like make yourself feel like you can't have something because it's bad for you, because you stressing out, at least this is my opinion, please tell me how you feel about it too. Stressing out and beating yourself up over having that piece of pie, to me, is far worse than eating the piece of pie itself, you know?
100%. Your body can't heal or lose weight in a stressed state. So that's really what the diet culture does, right? Like it puts us in this stress state of, oh, I can't have this, I can't have this. So we're always under stress, which
Right.
affects our cortisol level. And then we're
Yes.
telling ourselves we can't have it. And then we have a bad day, we feel bad, and we just dive in and we eat the pie, and then we feel bad and we beat ourselves up. Like it's not helpful to anybody.
Right. It's just a vicious cycle then. So,
Mhm.
you know, how do we change and I've mentioned this before, but the words we use around food, like bad and good and, things like that. How do we change that when we've been stuck in this cycle for so long?
I think the first thing is to bring awareness to it because a lot of people don't even realize that they're judging the food. They're labeling it, they're critiquing it. And then I think if we peel back the layers, they realize, oh, wait, I don't only do that with food, but I do that when I look in the mirror. I do that when I see other people. It's just something I think that we realize we do more than we realize. And
Mhm.
so I love that idea of replacing judgment with curiosity instead of saying, this is bad or this is good, maybe spin it and say, why do I think that's bad? Why do I think this is good? Does it make me feel good? Okay, awesome. It's a food that works well for me. If it doesn't make me feel good, I know it's a food that depletes my energy and I can choose to have it when I want to feel low energy. I mean, I think we really have to shift the relationship around it.
Mhm. I think we do too. So how do we become more aware? I mean, you said get curious, but a lot of people that haven't, aren't in this world of coaching or haven't done this journey, they don't understand exactly what that even means as far as around food. So how do we become curious? How do we change that mindset a little bit?
Yeah, I think just hearing this is a great first step and then putting some of it into practice, kind of be mindful, if you will, going forward. Like, okay, so when I'm getting ready to eat my dinner, what am I thinking? And just pausing. I think there's power in pausing, and you can really benefit a lot from that. So just even pausing and asking, what are my thoughts about food? What do I think before I eat? What do I believe? And maybe even journaling around that would be helpful. Take some time and just kind of process all of this stuff out.
For people that are just hearing about these concepts for the first time, and because I know how I was back in the day too, there was a whole lot of eye rolling and head shaking going on when I would hear
Yep.
stuff like this. Like, that's so corny. Like, that, there is no way
Right.
that can work. That is just beyond corny, or whatever. I mean, like, that's an old school word, showing my age there, but that's okay. So what would you say to the people who are listening to this kind of concept for the first time and doing what I did back in the day, which was roll my eyes and shake my head and be like, there's no way that can work. It's just too cheesy, I guess would be a good word.
I would say try it. Maybe keep listening to this a few times and take one thing, take one action step from what you've heard here. Maybe it's, asking yourself, what do I believe about food? And journal it out and see if that doesn't kind of start the process. Because usually that one question can kind of kick us off and make us realize, oh, wait, I didn't know I thought this way. Oh, I felt this way. And oh, this must have came from there. And it will kind of create this ripple effect of, oh, yeah, this is what holidays were like at my house. This was our relationship with food. I always had to clean my plate as a kid. So now I feel guilty if I leave any food on my plate. Like,
Right.
kind of just think and take a little time to get curious and ask yourself those questions. What is my relationship like with food and why?
Yeah. I
That
think
would be the
that's,
one act.
yeah, I think that's a really great idea. And when you said when you were a child, you had to clean your plate using that example. Also, a lot of new moms feel like they not only have to clean their plate, but they have to clean their child's plate too. So they do a lot of picking up off their child's plate because they still kind of have that, in their mind that that plate needs to be clean for it to be a successful meal. So with new moms out there in mind, what would you say to them over not only cleaning their child's plate, but, or I mean, their own plate, but their child's also.
I think really that's where we need to like learn to listen to our bodies. And you had asked me about that earlier. We need to learn to listen to our bodies and know when we're full and when we feel satiated but not stuffed. That's a really good indicator that we don't need to eat anymore. And so if you feel like you need to eat it, set it aside. And maybe if you're hungry later, you can have it, but don't feel like you need to eat off the plate just because it's there.
Right. So what about the people who would feel like that's being wasteful? What would you say to that?
Save it for later. I mean, there are plenty of times where, I've heard stories. We haven't done this at our house, but there have been plenty of people who are like, you know what, my child wasn't hungry. I saved their plate and they ate it later. You don't
Yeah.
have to throw it away. You can save it for later. Leftovers are great. Then you don't have to cook the next day.
Man, I love leftovers. We've had
I
leftovers
know.
2 nights in a row in our house. It's been fantastic.
See, saves you
So
time, saves you energy.
it does. It absolutely does. And so I think that's a great idea is to just simply save it. It doesn't have to be thrown out. So but I think there's a lot of guilt associated with that, the concept that it is going to be wasted, you know?
Mhm. Yeah. And it's so interesting because what we as parents can do is we can put that guilt on our kids too. Like, oh my gosh, you need to eat all of that. And then what kind of habits does that create in them? That's not teaching them how to honor their hunger and fullness. That's not teaching them to listen to their bodies. It's, I have to finish the food on my plate.
Right, right. Yeah, I remember a distinct example of that that happened in my house, not by me, with one of my kids when I was growing up, and it's never been forgotten by me or my child in that situation. And it was a very stressful. It's not only stressful for the parent, but it's stressful for the child because they're genuinely not, their bodies don't want that food.
Yes. Yes. And when we eat under stress, our body can't assimilate the nutrients as well. And so, there can be a lot of negative that can come from that situation. I don't think it's intentional on anybody's part, but I think not only with like focusing on the culture around the table and what kind of relationship we're helping our kids with around food and their bodies.
Yeah. And do you feel like most people aren't aware of that, of how that carries over into other aspects of life?
100%.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's just one person at a time, right? That's why we're doing this podcast, and we'll reach that one person that needs to hear it, and then it'll have that ripple effect. I mean, I think that's it, I mean, you kind of want to do the mass education. It just doesn't work that way. So just being mindful and putting out the information one person at a time and asking people to share it with other
Absolutely.
people.
And I think like as a mom, it's so fascinating because our 15-year-old, she'll ask her friends, okay, so what was the last fruit and vegetable you ate? Are you hydrated? Like she is like kind of doing what I do, like with her friends. And she was like, I feel like I could do your job. And I'm like, this is crazy. Like I never envisioned that happening, but I love that she's like creating that like culture of health within her friends.
Yeah, because really that is, I mean, she's 15, you said? That's where a lot, I mean, like that age group is where a lot of I don't want to call them bad habits, but unhealthy, let me go with that word. Unhealthy habits really start is like in that age group with especially young ladies, young men too, but especially with young ladies. So I think her being so mindful and sharing that with her friends is absolutely amazing. And like, I mean, I'm sure you really encourage her in that way and applaud her for that because that's incredible, especially coming from a peer. I mean, it's one thing to have a mom say something like that to you, but
Right?
when your best friend is like, "Hey, girlfriend, you need to maybe take a look at this," and I think that's really impactful.
Mhm.
So good
I,
for
it,
her.
I don't know. It was just so crazy to see. I'm like, I never thought this would happen.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's the power of example. That's what that is,
Mhm.
because we can tell people things till the cows come home, but they're going to pay attention to what we're doing with our own life and what they see and implement those things. They see more. I mean, gosh, kids see everything. We think they don't see things, they see everything. It's
More is taught
incredible.
than taught, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Mm.
So, gosh, I'm so excited about your daughter doing that, because each one of her friends is probably talking about it in their homes, and with if they have siblings or other friends that come
Mhm.
over, and so it just has this giant ripple effect. So that is so beautiful. Yay. Yay. That's so awesome. Do you have any other tips or anything else you'd like to share with us today on this topic?
I just want people to know that freedom is possible. And I feel like so many of us get caught up in it has to look a certain way, or it has to be this way, or this is what this person told me. But really, you have everything you need inside of you. You just need to learn to tap in and listen to it and honor that and respect that. And, there's so much beauty that can come from that. And so I want you to know that hope is possible. I want you to know that healing is possible. And it's exciting. It really is. It can really change so much. And I don't think we realize how much that can change for us, how much benefit can come from that, how it can affect so many other areas of our lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that just occurred to me too is when we talk about things like this, we have a tendency to think about it from the overindulging side of things. Do you also work with girls who underindulge in this, in the food aspect of things? And how does this same concept work for them?
Mhm. Yeah, usually there's something behind that. Like a lot of times, people who don't eat enough, it's because they're looking for control in an area of life, and they feel like that's one thing they can control is how much they eat or don't eat. And so, if we can usually figure out, okay, what happened that makes you feel out of control? What are some things we can do to help you feel a little bit more in control? That usually helps with the relationship with food. And so it's really kind of figuring out again the root cause of like, why are we doing this? What's really going on? Because it's not about the food. It's never about the food. It's just how it presents itself.
Right. I just think it's really important for anyone listening to know that this is coming from both angles and not just one, because it really is very much about what's going on inside and not just what's manifesting on the outside as far as habits go. So I think
Absolutely.
that's
Because I've done both. I mean, in high school, I withheld because I wanted to be thin enough and get the boys' attention, and that was going on. And then I went over here, stressed out, overwhelmed, exhausted mom who just used food to feel better. And so that started in childhood. So I've been all over with this. It's
right.
not the food, like you said.
Yeah, it's not. And do you also recommend meditation or any kind of breath work or anything like that also?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the 5-5-7 breath because it kind of calms the system down. It links the body and the brain. And when we're stressed and overwhelmed, we'll either overeat or undereat. And so if we can kind of bring our body back into balance using the 5-5-7 breath, I love that. So all about that, all about people, praying, meditating, whatever they need to do to create that peace because we can create peace. And
Yes.
I'm laughing. I'm going to call my husband out because I'm a chronic overcommitter. And he was like, you can control that. You can control your schedule. And I'm just thinking, like, we can do things to help us have more peace and more joy in our day. We maybe just don't realize that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so true. And there's a popular I don't know if I would want to call her a coach, but speaker. How about that? I'll use that term. She's a popular speaker, and she says, when things are gaining that momentum and you can't get away from it in any other way, just go take a nap, you know, because you've got to stop that speeding train somehow, so if you just sometimes just take a nap, or I've even told people before, if you're in a conversation that is starting to stress you out, just say you have to go to the bathroom
Mhm.
and just go to the bathroom and take a breath. I mean, nobody needs to know you didn't do anything in there, but just breathe. you know but just, I mean, nobody's going to tell you you can't go to the bathroom, so you can just use that as an opportunity to go to the bathroom and shut the door and just have a quiet moment to yourself. And I said, but whatever you do, don't say, hold that thought before you leave. Just say, I've got to go to the bathroom
Right.
and go to the bathroom. Because what you don't want to do
Yes.
is hit pause and just have them think you're going to resume that conversation when you come back out again.
That's great advice. I love that.
Yeah, it's a sneaky little trick, but hey, it works, and it gives you that moment to just catch your breath and collect your thoughts for a moment. So, yeah.
Sometimes when we're heated, we don't think logically. I mean, we just get over emotional and not very helpful.
Yeah, it's true. And continuing conversations when you're in that frame of mind is kind of like talking to a drunk, right? It's just not beneficial, you know. So, thank you so much for your tips and what you do, because this is such an important part of the need that's in our society today. I mean, it really is. And I applaud you for not jumping onto the diet train and everything, and just approaching it from a more holistic standpoint, because me, a lot of people don't, well, I think there's more and more people becoming aware, but so many people still don't view this food as a holistic piece of things, how our relationship with food is, and it really is. It's super important. And like you said, it flows over into different areas of our lives. It really does. So thank you so much for what you do.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. This has been a great conversation.
You're very welcome. I'm so happy you came on here. And for people who would like to have a coach like you around the subject of food, where can they find you?
Yes, my website is free, the number two, the letter B, coaching.com. So free to be coaching.com.
Oh, nice. And I will drop all the links in the description box below this video. Thank you so much one more time for being my guest today and for getting this information out there. I know that this is going to be so helpful for someone that is going to be hearing it in the future. And I'm very excited about that, because this whole reason I'm doing this podcast is to get this helpful information out there so that people know there's hope, there's choices, there's freedom, like you said, and that's very, very exciting. So, if you would like to get a hold of Melissa, the information for her will be down in the description box below this video. Thank you for listening. I appreciate every single one of you. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And also, I keep forgetting to mention that we do have an Eternal Evolution of Self podcast community, and that link is in the description box below this video as well if you'd like to join that. So thank you so much. And as always, I love you all.